So I'm going to do pretty much a blind reaction to Girl Define's video, God's design for sexuality. Why? Because I'm bored and I can. This is the first time I've seen this video, so I don't know what's going on. The sun's rising in the background, and without further ado, let's react to this, I guess.
Hey guys, it's Bethany and Kristen with Girl Defined Ministries. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are actually going to be jumping in to the second part of a four-part video series based off of our new book, Sex, Purity, and the Longings of a Girl's Heart.
I'm sorry, did she say sex, purity, and the longing of a girl?
Welcome back to That's Cringe, ladies and
That's cringe. Right after. Okay, that is actually very well timed. I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry, but did she say longing of a girl's heart? Longing of a girl's heart. Could they just not try and represent every girl? Because I'm not sure if you're aware, ladies, but not every girl longs for a man or sex.
So if you are just jumping on today, you haven't seen last week's video, we encourage you to go check that out because it's kind of building on top of each other. Really like an overview of this whole book in a nutshell. But as usual, if you like this video, definitely give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more from us, subscribe.
Definitely not.
We post new videos every single Wednesday, and if you want to see content like this continue on, we just ask that you would link arms with us over at patreon.com and support us there. As we dig into...
You mean where you're Christians, you're shitting on other people for different beliefs, sexualities, etc., 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 because they don't share the same lifestyle? Or am I just, jumping the gun here?
Today's topic, I think it's something that, the topic of sexuality and really it impacts our lives in such a personal way, which is one of the reasons that we wrote the book. But really striving to understand God's design for sexuality, it's something that I feel like we as Christian women specifically, we kind of know some about other areas. Like, yes, I need to be patient, or yes, God is the creator, those sorts of things. But in the area of sexuality, something that impacts our lives so hugely and so directly, I think if we're honest, a lot of us don't really understand God's design for sexuality in our lives. I mean, I know for both of us, it's something that we're still learning. It's huge. It's a massive thing as we've been unpacking it. Yeah. It's just like there's so much to learn. So much to learn, but I feel like the more we've learned, the more freeing, the more like we've understood, wow, even our concept of God, I feel like in a much deeper, big...
Hang on, I need to rewind a bit.
Really understand God's design for sexuality in our lives. I mean, I know for both of us, it's something that...
So basically, God's plan for sexuality in our lives?
So hugely and so directly, I think if we're honest, a lot of us don't really understand God's design for sexuality in our lives. I mean, I know...
God's design for sexuality. What is that exactly? Are you just trying to say that heteronormative is the only design? Because if I'm correct, the original scriptures for many of the Bible passages have been translated, retranslated, and lost in sands of time, translated over and over and over again until we have this homophobic bullshit that you're literally just gonna say this is the only factual thing about the Bible. This is exactly what God says. Why don't you get the original and translate it fresh off the page? Sodom and Gomorrah. It's about gang rape. Gang rape. Not homosexuality, gang rape.
for both of us, it's something that
we're still learning. It's huge. It's a
huge.
massive thing as we've been unpacking it. It's just like there's
What you're learning, are you actually learning the different someone else's side of the story, or are you just blindly following your beliefs and only listening to things that other homophobic Christians are saying? What exactly are you doing?
so much to learn.
So much to learn, but I feel like the more we've learned, the more freeing, the more like we've understood, wow, even our concept of God, I feel like in a much deeper, bigger way, our relationship with God. So our hope is really that no matter where you're coming from right now, no matter what you're coming to the table with, because we all have a lot of, just pain sometimes that can come with this topic. We just want to welcome.
You know why there's pain with this topic? Because people are so hateful. You call yourself a Christian, then you're homophobic, transphobic, and about a bunch of other hateful things toward anyone who isn't a Christian or cishet. So, of course, there's going to be a lot of pain.
You here, we want to invite you into this conversation and really join us as we.
This is like almost 2 minutes in, and I'm bored, honestly. I'm just bored. I'm not yawning because of... hang on. I'm not yawning because I'm bored. I'm yawning because I'm nocturnal. Honestly, my nocturnal lifestyle is a lot more entertaining than this.
Dig into God's design, because we both have experienced embracing God's design, the freedom, the beauty, the life that it can bring when we embrace that. So we just invite you into this conversation and hope that you will gain a greater understanding of God because of this conversation. I am so excited to be digging into God's design for sexuality.
Or what you could be doing is pushing people who are in the LGBTQA plus community further away from God. This is going to be remarkably boring.
Because like you said, it has changed our lives and our perspective of God. And as we unpack this today, there's so much more that we want to say. Like, even as we were talking about this and what we were going to talk about and dig into God's word, we were like, there's so much. It really could be hours long. I know. And I guess that's why we wrote the book, to really get into more of it. But as we go back to the basics, like as Christian women, we're questioning, why am I sexual? Why did God create this? What is the purpose of my sexuality? Which is the question we're going to unpack. It's really going to be a nutshell. We're just going to lay the foundation. But as we talked about in last week's video, we dug into Genesis, and in Genesis 1 and 2, we saw from the very beginning of time that God had a blank slate. He chose to create whatever he wanted. He made a man, a woman. He designed them to be fully sexual. And that's something that...
Isn't it hilarious that whenever the concept of gender and sexuality comes up, it's always the same scriptures? Genesis, Deuteronomy, I can't remember Bible names, I'm sorry. It's like, what, 6:39 a.m. already? Damn. This is boring as fuck. But as I said, it's always the same scriptures. There are so many scriptures before and after and all around, but Christians seem to only care about the scriptures that make them look good. Take it from me. I grew up in a Christian household.
We don't often associate like God and sexuality. Like, what? They go together? Like, he made us this way on purpose. He designed our sexuality. Then he took this man and woman, put them in a permanent relationship. So for the first time, created this permanent earthly relationship where they were to be joined together, and God invented marriage. So for the first time on the scene, we see marriage.
He made Adam out of dust. He made Eve from Adam's rib bone. You know why it's Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve? Because Steve's her dead name. That is a meme that I'm taking on board because honestly, I mean, how else? Because Adam was made from one of God's rib bones and from the dirt, and then Eve was made in the exact same fashion but from Adam's rib bone into the dirt. Therefore, she would have probably most likely been made exactly like Adam until God said, you know what, let's give her titties and a different area downstairs.
Enter the scene. So we have these sexual beings.
And then, wider hips and blah 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 blah. Science.
God created them for relationship, for one another, for marriage. And then we zoom out.
Because Adam and Eve were the first humans. And if you are Jewish or you follow Jewish folklore, you would know the story of Lilith, who is, in Jewish folklore, Adam's first wife, who was not made from Adam's bone, but made exactly like Adam. And she decided she didn't want to be a bottom. She wanted to be equal, because she had been made his equal. And in a way, Eve is not Adam's equal because she submitted to him. Therefore, Christians have this idea that wives must submit to their husbands and ignore the fact that the Bible also says, husbands, submit to your wives. But as soon as someone says that, it's, oh, how dare you, feminist propaganda, blah blah blah. Read the goddamn Bible.
A little bit more and we see, wow, they were designed to enjoy sexual intimacy within that relationship. And so as we get back to the beginning, we see so clearly from Genesis that our design sexually was so intentionally planned by God. And as awesome and amazing as marriage was then and is now,
because humanity didn't exist, straight people are basically breeders. I know it's a nasty word to say, but think about it. Heterosexual people repopulate the world. Good for you. I have been told multiple times by non-Christian boys, by the way, that a woman's only purpose is to be a baby-making factory. So excuse me if I don't believe you.
it's so crazy as we've been digging into scripture and digging into God's design, as we look throughout the entire Old Testament into the New Testament, we see that God was up to something bigger, right? Like, marriage is amazing, but it's not the end of the story. And we don't actually know what that end of the story is until we get into the New Testament. And then we see God zoom out and show us this picture that this amazing marriage.
Actually, most of the New Testament is Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. They are all centered around Jesus, Jesus' miracles, his death and resurrection, and that. And it's not until Romans, is it Acts or Romans that come first? But like the books like 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, these were letters to churches in other places. Romans, Corinthians, I don't have a copy of the Bible, but a lot of the New Testament is either around Jesus, Jesus' life, or letters to various churches in the ancient times. Interesting thing about the Romans, one of the things that the Romans did not like was, what was it? There was something that the Romans didn't like, And a lot of people say that that was, oh, that was, oh, it was about incest. Not even the Romans liked it. And it's like, yeah, take note from that. Romans don't like it, so why should you do it? I love that.
Relationship was actually designed to not be the main thing, but to be an earthly picture of what God's permanent love looks like for his children, for those who have accepted Christ as their Savior. God says, I am a God who loves with permanent love. So he created marriage, and then he actually sanctified it and created...
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're basically trying to say that the only love that is real love is the love between a man and a woman. I am not okay with this. Basically, you're trying to say that everything else is wrong, and it is only the love between a man and a woman that is the only validated love. And
what he called a covenant, which is something like, I don't know if you use that word too often.
Not that, it really wasn't until I got married 6 months ago that I started thinking about it a lot more.
Right.
Like, oh.
Just for clarification, I'm not married. I am 20 and happily not married. Yet. What is my sexuality? Spoiler alert, it's not straight.
Snap, I'm entering a covenant. Like, this is a big deal, you know?
Yeah. And so it wasn't something really that I had thought a lot about.
Right, and I don't think about it daily either, but it's not a word I really use, but we do hear it associated with marriage a lot, but we don't often know, like, what is it? But when God created marriage...
God created man and woman. God said that this is good. But I do not recall anywhere in the Bible that said God created marriage. Now, it could just be me, but I'm pretty sure God did not create marriage. And this is just a Christian concept that God created marriage because he had made Adam and Eve. If you're just going to bash on gays all the time, I'm pretty sure you're both wearing clothes made out of fabric, two kinds of fabrics, which is not allowed. What else? I don't know if they're wearing any piercings. I don't know if they have any tattoos. Did you know that the Bible is A-OK with slavery? Big no-no. But Christians will skip over that part. Trust me, it disgusted me to know that the Bible is okay with slavery.
He actually made the relationship to be in a covenant. And you think, like, what's a covenant? I didn't know exactly what that meant, but it essentially means a promise that can't be broken. And so what God was trying to...
Okay, so why is Christians get this special covenant, but as soon as gay people want this same covenant, because they're also within a church, they get denied because they are homo of the sexual?
Paint really a metaphor, a picture through the institution of marriage, so that we all on this earth could look and say, that is telling me something about God. And what God was trying to tell us through this picture of marriage was that he is a covenant-keeping God with his children, that he enters a covenant with us, and
he enters a covenant with us. Okay, that's okay. So why don't the gays have the same covenant?
he says, I am a God who loves you with an unconditional love, and my promises cannot be broken.
So why is there Christians going around saying God hates gays? If he loves us with an unconditional love, why are there exceptions of gay people, trans people, or anyone who doesn't fit your little circle?
I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I am a covenant-keeping God.
So basically, people who trust in Christ as their Savior then enter into that covenant with Christ. And he says, it can't be broken.
Right.
Like, this is a promise. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to forsake you, which is amazing.
Exactly. So
These rules apparently do not apply for us gays, you know? Oh, I'll never leave you, I'll never forsake you, unless you're gay.
that was mind-blowing for me when I realized that marriage and that relationship that God instituted from the beginning was a setup for this grand story that he was eventually going to unfold and show us that marriage was actually about reflecting who he is, his character as a covenant-keeping God.
Totally.
And marriage teaches us huge truths about God.
And it's crazy because
my parents' marriage ended in divorce twice, because I've got my birth mom and my birth dad. They separated when I was 5, traumatized the shit out of me. Divorced legally when I was 9. Then my dad remarried and is in the stages of getting a divorce. So you're forgetting the whole divorce situation, which God says oh gee, I don't know, but I can't remember, but can't remember what I was gonna say, but the Bible is also okay with a girl getting raped by a guy. That girl marries that guy, or if she doesn't do or say something, then it's her getting raped is her fault, and they will stone her to death.
because I think that for me too, I get stuck on marriage.
Right,
I get stuck on the picture.
Right, the metaphor.
And I forget
stuck
who
on the
it's all about
picture.
and the bigger purpose. And I think, like, you probably do the same thing, because I still struggle with that. Like, oh, it's not all about getting that relationship or experiencing something within that. It's like, it's actually about God. Yeah, which is crazy. So when we think about the covenant of marriage, we think, okay,
It's
the way that God designed it, it's supposed to be permanent, and it's supposed to be intimate. He created.
It's supposed to be permanent. Statistically speaking, all the nice married couples will be statistically divorced. At least 40%, maybe 50, maybe 60. Take my parents' marriage for instance. My dad's a Christian man, my mom is a Christian woman with Jewish backgrounds. They're divorced.
Sex to be enjoyed within the context of marriage, and that was not an accident. Okay, so this is a very intentional part of God's design for marriage to reflect this greater metaphor, because God desires a relationship with us that is permanent, the covenant that he made for us, but that's also intimate. So intimate in this,
as I've said before, apparently this does not apply to people who identify as gay. These women are talking about sexuality, and all they're talking about is heteronormativity and Bible stuff out of a mistranslated book that is over a few thousand years old.
sense that God knows us and we know him. It's a deep relationship. It's not just a surface level. And when you think about marriage, that covenant where you are committing your life, and then you are having the most intimate experience with that person, God gave that to us just so that we can understand, this is a mind-blowing experience, but I love you so much more and so much deeper than anything you can ever actually experience on this earth with another human. And that's my relationship that I desire to have with you. So when you think about your sexuality and you think, wow, my sexuality drives me towards something, ultimately our sexuality does drive us towards relationship. Think, why do people get into relationships? Why do they get married? Because they're driven by these desires to be with someone. But even if you...
But even desires can be either a spur of the moment, like my dad's second marriage, or the unwanted one, where it's one person loving someone from the same gender. Do I have a double chin?
Never actually enter into that marriage covenant, and you're like, but I'm not going to get experience the metaphor. Well, what does the metaphor point towards? The metaphor points us towards Christ and the relationship that he longs to have with us. So as a sexual being, even if you're single, you can say, okay, I have...
Asexuals are going to be laughing in the background as a sexual being. No. This is going on way too long, and it's because I keep stopping for useless shit. Honestly, I just can't keep watching it. It's just so annoying. More dislikes than likes. Ooh, that's gotta burn. They still have a lot of subscribers, but a lot of people who don't like them. I should probably do more reaction videos. Probably do a little bit more in general. But I'm not doing this again. This video, not doing it again. This is me trying to do a reaction video and just getting angry and tired. Oh. I choked on my own